Dollar bills, everyone, as it's September 22nd, and the biggest news of the day is not on the practice field, it's off the field in a boardroom. And yeah, that's where Virginia Tech season's at, and we're going to bring in the wizard, Doug Bowman himself from 24/7 Sports, rebranding Kolby's Corner into Doug's Dungeon. I think that tested well in folks. How are we doing?
We're good. Dungeon appears pretty correct based on my background here. But happy to be here. Big news today. I remember talking on our podcast before right before the season opener, saying like no more Board of Visitors talk. We were only going to talk about the games.
We were so young and naive.
Yeah, that was 4 short weeks ago. So interesting times indeed.
So just jumping off on this, you've sort of been ahead of the curve on everyone on this. Obviously, a couple months ago when you said you found those original materials, and then we're kind of the catalyst to get this promoted. Ended up on game day, a lot of these materials getting out there, obviously wanting to promote it. What did you think of the news that dropped today? Just your initial reaction.
Overall, it was about what we expected, I think. A lot. I mean, number one, Whit Babcock doesn't go to the Board of Visitors in August without some reasonable confidence. President Sands was involved in that. I mean, you don't make that presentation without expecting it to have support. And then the rector, John Rokovich, comes out at the end of that meeting, or I think it was a couple days after, technically at the end of that series of meetings, and instructs two of the board members to go ahead and put together the plan to do this. So from that point, we were just waiting on the numbers to drop. They had until September 30th. Today is, I believe, 10 days before, or actually 8 days before now the meeting that they called on September 30th to actually do the vote to approve this thing. You can see right in the resolution that they posted this morning that the board is going to go ahead and recommend that the resolution be approved. So that'll clear this $229.2 million in additional total investment to the operating budget each year. That's the recurring budget each year. There's another $42 million, I believe, or maybe the one-time expenses are factored into that. So $212 million by fiscal year 29 will be Virginia Tech's operating budget for the year. So that is starting at $190 million this year. But that is what Whit Babcock asked for when the board asked him that question back in August, saying that Tech needed to be around $200 million to compete for championships in the ACC. So at least according to these numbers, the board has done that. So now the rest of the story begins.
So I guess jumping into that, what I think people see the $40 million or 42.6, whatever it is, in one-time funds. What does that entail, and what do people expect with that?
Yeah, the one-time funds. So during Whit Babcock's presentation in August, he laid out kind of the funding priorities of what this additional investment could look like. Some of that is those annual recurring expenses. Staff salaries are going to be a huge part of that. Also in that presentation, you can see like Tech compared their football budget to UNC, Clemson, and Florida State. And you can see like Tech's paying half as much in head coaching salary. You can expect the next head coach to get paid a lot more than Brent Pry did.
Yeah.
The assistant coach salary pool is going to increase. All those things are recurring revenues. And then there was some kind of one-time expenses, which for the most part make up kind of your infrastructure projects, I guess. Wi-Fi at Lane Stadium is a big one. Heating the indoor practice facility, LED lights. Everyone loves LED lights. So how
about Wi-Fi? I'm struggling with Wi-Fi. Can we get it in Lane? Is that on the docket?
Wi-Fi is on the docket. That's something they've talked about for years and years and years of not having the funding to do, or not being able to secure the funding, whatever happened, why they don't have it yet, but that's definitely on the list. So that's what the one-time expenses are going to make up. $42.5 million, I think it was, based on this plan announced. So there's a new scoreboard. They want to do a new video board for Lane Stadium. I know there's a study that they want to kick off to explore creating a mixed-use development around Lane Stadium. So you got to kick off a study, I guess, to see how feasible that really is and what the plan for that could be. So those are all kind of like the expenses they'll do once and then they'll fade off. But there's still what they're calling the incremental operating revenue, I guess, or budget that'll be year after year after year.
And you touch on a lot of really good points. I know a lot of people had questions on that, and we'll touch on even more of that with Castle and some other projects later. But I think also a lot of people are sort of looking for the benchmark of, obviously, that everyone sees this massive increase, and they're like, well, where does that put Virginia Tech in comparison to not only Clemson and Notre Dame, as it said, but just the rest of the field? So for fiscal year 26, it's the 190.1 plus the 13.8 for the one time. So based off last year, if I looked at the slides right, that would put Virginia Tech in the top 2 to 3 in the ACC alongside Clemson and Notre Dame. But obviously everyone else is going to have increases as well. Where do you think this positions them overall in the short term, and also ahead of, obviously, those 2029, 2030 TV contract deals?
Yeah, I think the only way to look at this number, this plan, is like maybe fiscal year 26 and 27. 28, 29, you start to get into realignment and all of that noise. So I think those budget numbers are projections. Maybe I would focus more on like the 47.1 million that they're putting into the program immediately. So those are that's the big story. And I think as it relates to where Tech will fall in the ACC, that was the big story coming out of that presentation in August, right? When all of a sudden everyone realized Tech was 14th out of 18 in the ACC in terms of operating budget. I was talking, I heard from somebody at the athletic department after that, and I threw out like, so where do you want, what's the ask going to be? Is this like top half of the ACC? And the response was no, they want to go like top of the ACC, like into the top group. You're not going to outspend Notre Dame or Clemson or Florida State, but that's where Tech wants to be, wants to live, and wants to fund this athletic department at that level, into the top 4 or 5 schools. So I think that's where this, at least initially, will get them. Obviously, everyone else is looking at doing the same. If you value football in particular to your institution, you're having the same discussions. The revenue share stuff is still going to go up. So like, which is only like levels the playing field, for a little bit, kind of thing.
And which is why you see the buy-in even from a university like North Carolina when they make that such an I guess investment in football, obviously with Bill Belichick and everything going on, because alignment does sort of circle around that. I guess the next thing that's been making the rounds is, where is this money coming from? And that was laid out a little bit, but there's still some question marks. So I guess just getting into that, $120 million is listed under philanthropy, 48.3 in institutional support, and then 21.3 falling on the students. And then we'll talk about bridge funding a little bit. What do you think? Where is this money going to end up coming from?
Yeah, it was interesting. I kind of ran the percentages today. If you look at the total investment by kind of group, 120 million out of 229, 52% of this is going to come from philanthropy. That's the biggest question with this plan going forward, given how large of a chunk that is of the plan. Do they have the donor commitments already? Where's that money coming from? Is it new funding, existing commitments? Do they have a large chunk of it already committed, and then they're going to fundraise the rest off of kind of the normal fan base initiatives? So I would expect that to be a key question that you're going to want to get answered potentially next week when they actually do the board meeting and present this plan to the board, because that's a lot of money each year that they're counting on to make this a reality. And we'll see what happens as far as donor support and how strong it is and how much extra fundraising they're going to require from that. I know in the documents, and I think in the board statement from they released afterwards, they said this is new fundraising initiative or something along those lines. So this is new money they're going after in some form, and we'll see how close they can get to 30 million each year, which they plan to do. Institutional support is what's allowed by state law that the university can contribute to the athletic department. At the August meeting, I believe they said they were at 15%, and they can get to 20%. State law in Virginia limits UVA and Virginia Tech as Power 4 institutions to 20% institutional support. I believe like your G5 programs like a JMU or an ODU can go much higher than that. So Tech is getting to max that out basically here.
Yeah.
And then your student fee revenue, I think it speaks for itself. They're just increasing the student fee that is charged to all students to add another chunk of change. There they increased the student fee this most recently by, I believe it was a substantial margin more than the $100 a year that they're doing now. So that's kind of where it all comes from. To get to 229.2 million, the philanthropy part is the biggest question in terms of the largest portion of this plan is still on the donors and the fan base to come up with that money.
And then tossing out the bridge funding. I mean, obviously the philanthropy aspect, and we'll talk too, but the bridging, is that, I mean, taking a loan, like I feel like this athletic department is well on record of showing of wanting to operate in the black. They're not really operate in a margin. And this essentially is, I guess, betting on that. Like, are you going to be taking out a loan against the athletic department with that bridge funding potentially?
That's what I would assume it means. Why it's like sectioned off into its own call out. The 39.6 million over the next 4 years that they'll use to bridge fund. That I know in the statement that the board put out, they essentially said this is bridge funding for the next 4 years to get you to fiscal year 2029. At which point it seems like they want the revenue generation to take over, to not need that bridge funding anymore. So over the next 4 years, Virginia Tech is going to be tasked with, all right, how do we like generate that level of revenue to avoid being constantly in debt and running in the red and all that stuff. So this is the board kind of giving them their blessing to be in the red for the next 4 years, to make these investments, to figure out how to monetize Wi-Fi at Lane Stadium, special events at Lane Stadium, all that stuff. Get that all figured out over the next 4 years and hopefully compete at the highest level in the ACC, because that'll affect the conference payouts and all that stuff.
I guess even just for that too, just picking your brain, like how obviously the scoreboard, people are like, well, do you really need a new scoreboard? But that opens up so many opportunities for corporate partners and sponsors. Like, what do you think is the most valuable? Like, you think they maybe push back heating the indoor practice facility just based on where things are going, or like, I don't know. I mean, obviously you had the story coming out of tightening the bolts in the north end zone for
it costs a lot of money to tighten bolts.
Exactly. So I think people maybe get a little bit lost when they see this big, massive budget increase, and then they see stories like that trickle out where they're like, well, we could have had a corporate sponsor on the field for, there's just different things like that. So
yeah, I think they'll definitely prioritize the investments based on what will have the most direct on-field impact. That's why you'll see, staff salaries and stuff like that. That they're going to be hiring a general manager of some sort and building out a front office staff and all that. I do think like your indoor practice facility probably gets, I was trying to identify it in some of these numbers of like, because it was 8 million, I believe, in Whit Babcock's projections of what that would cost. Seems like something that can wait a little bit longer. I think like a Wi-Fi is a big one. Not from just like a fan experience thing, which it is, like a fan happiness thing when you can go to a game and actually use your phone, but it's also a big opportunity for revenue generation and capturing contact information for potential donors, potential season ticket holders, potential individual game buyers. Like there's a lot you can do from a marketing department standpoint if the fans in attendance are able to use their phones during the game. So that feels like the big one. I think the mixed use development is going to be really interesting to watch them kind of pursue and explore through this. If you're looking at 2030 and beyond, needing to have some substantial revenue coming in to kind of take away this bridge funding initiative. That feels like a big task, but a potentially like a big source of revenue if they can develop some area around Lane Stadium to generate a bunch of cash. So I definitely think Wi-Fi is probably the first thing they can check off the list, because I would assume they've had it ready to go for a long time.
Just needed the money behind it.
Right.
Another thing, you talk about the mixed use, and that's going to be obviously years down the line, just even planning and everything with that. But even over on vtscoop.com, run the great 60% off promo. Company man had to get it in there. But Doug, you were talking about even today, brought Castle back up and what that could open up. Do you think there's more steam behind that now with this announcement or anything in that regard? Or is that still just something that's sort of going to take another massive just project?
I don't think it's part of this. That's a very expensive project to do, and I don't see the numbers here. And I think this is mostly focused on how do we get football to be back at the top of the ACC. But Castle, from a longer term, looking at 2030 and beyond, Castle's lack of premium seating, suites, whatever you want to call it, like that is a major opportunity for Virginia Tech to add revenue. You've seen them do it at Lane Stadium with, I forget what they call it, but the on-field boxes that they're generating a lot of revenue, or a healthy amount of revenue from.
Yeah, those are sold out, and I forget the numbers, but I was talking with someone who was running that, and I think it was, I forget what it was, but I was almost sort of maybe ragging on it in a way.
Yeah, and there's big money in premium seating and all of that stuff. The people that buy premium seats are companies and big donors that are going to donate more to you and all that stuff. So it kind of feeds on itself. So eventually they're going to get to Castle. I know they punted it after announcing it in 2021, I believe. But that's just a glaring, when you look at Virginia Tech compared to the ACC, the basketball arena and the lack of premium suites and the ability to generate revenue via that vehicle is a big kind of negative for Virginia Tech right now. So I would expect that to be, I don't think it's a priority right now. I think the priority is on, like, we got to win as many games in 26 and 27 so that the SEC and the Big Ten
to look attractive are
interested. But that's definitely on Virginia Tech's priority list of, like, we got to do something about Castle sooner rather than later.
So I guess shifting that forward with the whole Castle project, a lot of that was not only not having a big donor, I guess, step up and fund a lot of that project, which was going to be needed, a big donation. But then also around that time, 2021, there was this new thing called name, image, and likeness and being able to pay players. Where does that element step into all of this, especially when you talk about the projected $120 million that's going to lean on from philanthropy? And we've heard some smoke of some people anteing up some good amounts behind that. But like I said, until September 30th, we don't really have concrete stuff on that. So where does NIL and the collective and the Hokie Club, like where do those arms fit in this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a big kind of debate you can have over the philanthropy number. If $30 million are coming in from people that give to the university, give to athletics, is that 30 million less, or does that divert some support from your NIL funds, from your third-party Triumph donations and things like that can be used to attract players in different manners? I don't think, even with the rev share stuff that came out, I don't think NIL is going away as a way to attract talent. So that's the big question of, like, now you're taking 30 million from these people that are willing to give a lot of money to do this kind of stuff. Does that take from the kind of the pot of money that you have available for NIL over the next 4 years? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know how I'm sure they're thinking about it. If we're talking about it, they're thinking about it. But it's definitely a question when it comes to that. Another question when it comes to that 30 million.
Yeah, I know I'm putting you in a tough spot before this meeting. I'm like asking you all these questions. I feel like I'm just trying
to
keep
them coming.
I guess the next thing, just your thoughts. We have a great piece. Evan G. Watkins obviously ran it yesterday, talking about the restructuring of some of the back end, I guess, just structure of the athletic department specifically for football, because obviously this is all driven by football, and there's no question about that. There's obviously things built in for Olympic sports, but football specifically. Do you think the timeline is too ambitious for the GM, the head coach, just the overall structural overhaul before December, when it kind of seems like you need all this in place with signing day? You talk about the portal. You can have all this budget increase, but if you can't fill the team and you punt on 2026 and 2027, it does you no good because you're debuting,
It's a thin line that they're going to try and thread the needle here on, in terms of a GM search of some kind and a head coaching search of some time, and then you got to fill the staff, and then you've got to recruit the current roster and the transfer port. Like, it's going to be a narrow fit, but it is way more likely to succeed now than it was before today. If the job, Justin Fuente not successful, Brent Price not successful, 14th operating budget in the ACC, it was just not going to be an appealing job on the head coaching market for any potential, like the kind of candidate that Virginia Tech wants to hire. So this had to be done before any real search could get underway. That's why I tweeted out, like, all the coaching agents inbox rang with, "Hey, did you see this kind of thing?" As they start jockeying for position for their clients and all that stuff. So that part is going to heat up in earnest, in the GM search as well. I think this just makes Virginia Tech a more appealing job than it was when they fired Brent Pry a week ago. Like,
a lot different conception.
You think about searching for a general manager with effectively a blank slate of $230 million, saying, like, yes, Whit Babcock laid out some funding priorities and ideas of how they can spend it. But if you're, looking for an athletic department to overhaul and put your own vision in and all that stuff, that's certainly possible. And you would think that this level of investment is appealing in that sense. And then same thing with the head coaching search, where, you come in to Virginia Tech with the most funding that anybody's ever had at Virginia Tech.
It really is like once in a century, like, shakeup. Like, I feel like in the last 35 years, things have sort of been the same. This is a pretty big shot in the arm. I know there's a lot of questions still up in the air, but it is kind of a pretty big tipping point.
I mean, this is going back to Justin Fuente talking to Baylor kind of stuff, where I mean, I would argue they tried to recognize it with the football enhancement fund and all that stuff going on, but who knows what happened to that project. But, like, here we are, and it's finally, like, getting to that point where you're looking at a fresh perspective, fresh vision for Virginia Tech athletics that goes beyond just, like, who's the head coach of the football team.
Yeah. And like you said, I think this is so important, tied into the budget, is giving the general manager, the CEO, however that shakes, pretty much a $200 million clean slate for salary pools. That's so important. I know we talked about, obviously, all the physical, the scoreboard, getting heat in the Beamer barn and all those things. But these salary pools, like you said, the new head coach is going to get paid a lot more than Brent Pry did. And the GM is going to fill out a staff of a scouting department, however they shake that out, a lot more than who's there. It's just the way it is. It's up and to the left, as they said. Yeah. But
I know you were talking about the timeline for, like, can they thread the needle on hiring all that stuff, and I think you can get close enough. Like, you can hire a GM, you're going to hire, like, a CEO type athletics guy. Like, if you're going to hire a head coach, you can do all that and get, like, maybe a couple other hires in place. You can start to build kind of your team, but this feels like get those first initial hires in, and then you've got to keep going into December and January and February to fill out the rest of the department. But as long as you have, like, the leaders that you want in place, the new leaders
that can make that vision through some pretty critical months and the way the calendar shaped out.
Right. Then you can get a coach in place, or you can be ready to put a coach in place by the end of November.
And like you said, I mean, if they do go to this model, where does the NFL season end? A lot, like, they're playing into January. And I remember, like, even when Tyler Bowen, with Pry, when he was filling out his first staff, they were waiting for Bowen to wrap up in Jacksonville. So there's different things where you can make adjustments, but you can't wait for that head guy till January, February, March. Right. Like, that is the biggest snag, especially with them obviously eliminating the spring portal. Guys, make sure to jump in the chat, ask Doug any questions here. I know there was a lot of questions there on social media today. But Doug, for you, when they stream this live session, what is maybe something you're most interested to see them touch on or clear up for you? And maybe, like, if you had one question at the table, what would you ask?
The philanthropy stuff is the number one thing for me. It's the most variable part of this whole plan. Like, if you take that away, Tech is looking at $17 million in increased funding. So for next year, which is still a lot of money. But not. Yeah,
like, I don't want to diminish this. Like, when you see a $40 million increase, like that gets people's eyes, like, jumping off. Like, it's still a massive infusion. It's just
I also
obviously
don't
not
think I don't think they put $30 million flat across the board without some reasonable confidence that they can deliver on that.
100%.
But that's the number one question for me. The bridge funding thing, I assume they'll explain whatever that means and how that's going to work.
I would presume a loan structure with that.
That's really what I think you're going to get. You're probably going to get next week a large, it's a 6 or 7 slide presentation. Like, shouldn't be that exciting now that this has been posted. Like, you're not going to get into detail on how exactly this money is going to be spent for the reasons we talked about. There's probably going to be somebody else making those exact decisions. This is just the funding plan.
Yep.
So I think one of the big things to listen for maybe would be kind of any talk about where the government legislation portion of this is going to go. That's going to affect student fees. That's going to affect the institutional support cap. I know Tech and UVA are bound by that 20% I mentioned earlier. JMU, I think, can go up to like 55%. And I believe the Sportico article that came out earlier this year says they're even above that right now as they transitioned from FCS. So like they're not in compliant. Like there's something, there could be some wiggle room there where you can free up a little more institutional support for the years ahead. So those are the two elements of like what I keep listening for hints of, like some kind of lobbying strategy and plan to loosen up stuff at the state government level. Yeah.
Well, also just want to reiterate, Doug, I know this 6-slide one isn't going to be as interesting, but that one, I forget, it was a Friday night, and I just saw your messages start lighting up, say, wow, I found something. And would you believe what it sort of cascaded into?
It's not, I would say, it wasn't a coincidence then that they made that public.
It definitely wasn't a coincidence, but someone struck gold first, so
that's fair. I mean, but somebody else would have looked at it, right?
Well, it's
100% public information, and they wanted somebody to see it. Is the thing
that doesn't just slip out. But
and doing it in August, you could argue, well, it took so long, but also kind of teed up this situation where they did it right before they presumably had some idea that they might be in the market for a head coach. And to do it, the fact that they did it in August and can follow this up, I think they moved on from Brent Pry earlier than they hoped to this year, or thought they were going to do. So that's a little different than expected, but still getting this out there before the coaching carousel starts spinning was pretty key, because otherwise this job was just completely different.
I feel like a lot of people had those questions though on like just the timeline, because so much has been made of now what this carousel is going to look like this year. You had the board aligned for better or for worse, athletic focused, right? And that was under this administration and just the way it fell right now. So when you just look at the timelines and you said August, maybe you shorthanded yourself. And like I said, maybe they were going to ride with Pry, and if Pry goes 7-5 or 8-4 this year, we're obviously not having this conversation. But when you start 0-3 and you do need to hire a new head coach, when they see a $40 million increase, it lights people up a little bit. But there's just a lot of variables in the air. It's not like at the end of last year, the board, so it is just funny the way it fell. But we're here now, so we'll be covering it. I guess the next thing, and we'll wrap up here in a little bit. Appreciate everyone jumping in here, all the support. This will be a great replay to watch. Doug dropped a lot of good insight. But what do you think has been the biggest misconception? I know you're a busy man between cutting up NC State film, getting ready for the Ryder Cup, working a job, being a married man. But what do you think has been the biggest misconception, either on the boards or social media, that you've seen today just with the budget drop?
I think people have talked themselves out of this being a undeniably good thing for Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Like this had to happen. This is step one, right? They got to execute it.
Mm-hmm.
They got to find the right people to execute it. Like there's a lot, and then they've got to like continually update it. That's what I was talking about earlier, of like fiscal year 28 and fiscal year 29. Who knows what that's going to look like and what this budget actually is going to look like. It's more this immediate spend right now to get, and so like I know people are talking a lot about that 30 million in philanthropy and how much you can count on that and all that stuff, but like this is undeniably like one of the biggest decisions that Virginia Tech has ever made in support of athletics. And to finally put, you are talking about Virginia Tech being in the top 4, 5, 6 schools in terms of operating budget, with a large portion of that going to football. Like, this is the level of investment. This is the catch-up investment to finally level the playing field. I think you'll still have, Tech will still be playing catch-up. There's a difference between a program that is operating at $200 million for the first time ever and one that's been operating at $200 million for 5, 6, 7 years in a row. But this is what you wanted from Virginia Tech, to go all in on athletics, specifically football. They're very close to running out of time before the next round of conference realignment, but they did it. And, I think now we'll see how they execute it going forward. It's going to be interesting to watch, but I would be nothing except pretty excited about where this is going, that it's actually happening.
And I think the feeling is there's going to be less and less waves of conference realignment. That window is closing until it's sort of that. At least that's the feeling in the industry. You only get so many cracks of this thing until you're in or you're out, however that shakes. So it's a really pivotal time. Also wanted to reiterate, I know we've gone about 30 minutes, didn't really touch on it. Obviously, we're under the assumption that this does pass. You don't really let this get out there if you don't feel like this isn't going to get the votes on the 30th, whatever day that is. But I think that's important to clarify that we obviously do feel confident that there's still some questions lingering on that. And you touched on this a little bit, but before we wrap up and touch on some things, if this does pass, like I said, we do expect, how much closer does it really get Virginia Tech to competing with those P2 schools? Like you said, there's a difference between operating at this level for a long time and for the first year. Does this really push the needle for a new coach, or is it still really just roster reliant? And this is really nice on the back end, but does this really push them over the edge?
I think the biggest difference this is going to make is in the coaches that Virginia Tech can hire, both the head coach and the assistant coach salary pool. Like, being able to hire it's 10 assistants plus all the other assistants that they can hire now, but being able to hire a full staff at the top of the salary range across the board, right? Like, you're talking head coach, $8 million. That's what like UNC and Florida State and Clemson are spending on their head coaches. Much bigger assistant coach salary pool. I don't think Virginia Tech has ever had a coordinator over $1 million, but that's fairly routine these days for top coordinators.
And that's the range you have to, if you make this investment, you have to be in that range.
Right. And that should be the expectation, that this brings the most impactful part of this for Virginia Tech on the field immediately is going to be the quality of the coaching staff. And that's, in my opinion, where the largest chunk of this money should go. Just all the Wi-Fi, all that stuff is great. But to build out the best staff possible, no matter how much money it takes, is really the way to do this. You might as well, because if it doesn't work 3 years from now, when the Big Ten and SEC start poaching schools and you're on the outside looking in, at the least you'll say we tried. So you might as well go all in with a very expensive but hopefully worth it coaching staff.
Yeah, I had to take a big swing. And we'll have all that coverage as the head coach and general manager and all that fun stuff with the transfer portal in the season, after the season, over on btscoop.com. Doug, any other big points you want to touch on or you feel like you didn't get to on misconceptions or what this means?
No, I think we covered it pretty well. I'm just scrolling back through you can definitely see the alignment from Babcock's presentation in August to right here, where they're talking about the impact that Virginia Tech athletics has on the university. Says it attracts over 500,000 visitors to the university, contributing to the local and regional economy, facilitates lifelong connections, brand awareness, recognition. They say without investment, the university and region risk declining revenues, potential losses to the university, and potential losses to the broader community and region. That's Tech recognizing that it is a driver of economic activity in Southwest Virginia.
Yeah.
And that's all at risk if, number one, Virginia Tech's not successful, and number two, like we talked about, that they don't do everything possible to put themselves in the best position for when the SEC and Big Ten decide to do something else, then they've put everything else at risk. So that's where you're seeing a lot of this. It's not a coincidence that Babcock laid out those conference realignment scenarios in his presentation, which I think kind of underscores all of this. Is probably the true reason for this. They want to compete
Why
at
is
the
it
top of
happening
the ACC
now? Yeah,
because they want to get the invite.
Exactly. And I think you touched on a really good point there. I should have had the screenshot of the statement up, especially the part where I thought that was very telling. Obviously, after the materials dropped today, Doug obviously had the skinny on that, had it out. And then when they dropped that statement a little bit after from Virginia Tech talking about, I thought, sort of throwing the hands up saying this football team, 66,000 people plus for 6 or 7 Saturdays in the fall is vibrant and a shot in the arm to the rest of the community. I thought that was a pretty telling statement of alignment from people in Richmond, from people in the Southwest Virginia region, and people even up in Washington of trying to have to figure this thing out. So I think that was a really great breakdown, Douglas. Appreciate you jumping on. Who's going to win the Ryder Cup, man? How are we feeling?
United States is going to win the Ryder Cup. Can't come into Bethpage Black where myself shot a 103 and expect to get out of there with a win.
Slight plug.
Yeah, whatever.
There we go. Doug, what else we got going on? I know you're in your dungeon right now, cutting film on NC State.
Yeah, we're getting ready for the Wolfpack. First
initial thoughts, reactions?
Getting ready for the Wolfpack. Going to be interesting. This is not one of the games I expect Virginia Tech to have a chance to win over the next 9. If you look at the schedule, going on the road, playing at night at NC State, they're 3-1. They've played 4 decent opponents, so exactly who they are, and they've put up some points and some numbers that I just don't think Virginia Tech has the offense to compete with. So there's a small path to victory that I was just writing in before I hopped on here. Like if Tech can get out to like a great start in the first quarter, and like you start to give the team, which is obviously in flux right now, some reason to believe and some like momentum to get behind and say, oh, we could win. We could be 1-0 in the ACC, go back home to Lane Stadium, beat Wake Forest, and we're 2-0 all of a sudden after all this in the ACC. It's a very slim path. But to me, that's the only way this happens. Otherwise, it feels like a team ready to pretty much fold up and turn into a multi-score blowout.
Like I think Montgomery did a good job of keeping everyone together, but that could sort of be a quick inflection. Where do they rank SP Plus if you have it up? No worries if not. Like how much do you take from the Wofford game, and where do those teams sort of stack right now in SP Plus? Because I think we've talked about it, or you said like Wofford obviously was like 225 plus in SP Plus or wherever they were. So yeah, Kyron Jones probably had his most accurate game as a Virginia Tech player, but how much can you really take on that against? I know an NC State defense that is not exactly imposing, but
defense has really struggled. They got a new coordinator this year.
Yeah,
they're 64th in SP Plus, but that's 43rd on offense, 84th on defense.
I was about to say that D coordinator went to Marshall, I believe.
Tony Gibson, is their head coach now. They've played, so the teams they've played are all ranked higher than Virginia Tech is currently. So they're 3-1 against 4 teams that are all better than Virginia Tech. So I think that tells you a lot.
If you had a key stat, what's one thing that Virginia Tech needs to do to win the game? On Monday, mind you, I'm saying this on Monday. We'll have a whole week to figure out who's available, what's happening, and we'll have all that on VT Scoop. We have a lot of great VIP nuggets on some of that, but
I think they have to run the ball. You got to keep. I think it's the best part of Virginia Tech's offense that they kind of. I mean, it is the best part of. If you look at the success metrics, Tech's actually got the number 32 offense rushing game in the country in terms of success rate on rushing plays. They're halfway decent at running the ball, and that tees up everything else. It limits the pressure on the offensive line to protect drones, right? Keeps the offense off the field. Hollywood Smothers, NC State's running back, is really, really, really good and is going to be tough to tackle for Virginia Tech's defense. So if you can run the ball, maybe you can put together some kind of game plan to, keep him off the field, control the line of scrimmage, that kind of stuff, and try and win one. but I don't know.
Okay, last thing, we'll get you out of here. What is the most winnable schedule right now that you think Virginia Tech has on the schedule going forward?
Most winnable game
left?
It's got to be Wake Forest, right?
Yeah, at home.
Wake at home or Cal at home. I mean, Cal just got.
I was going to say, man, that San Diego State result was.
Yeah. So they're obviously up and down. So those are the two I think you
Friday night Terradome, does that still play?
I think that's been retired for the time being, Kolby. But I mean, those are the two other games. Like Georgia Tech doesn't seem
in Atlanta, like
Louisville, Florida State, Miami,
Florida State in Doak.
Yeah,
Miami looks like arguably the best team in the country. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll have you on here some other time. We'll pull up our season predictions and laugh at ourselves. So,
exactly. Yes.
All right. Well, appreciate it. That was Doug Bowman of VT Scoop jumping on with us on Kolby's Corner. Going to be watching the Ryder Cup all throughout the weekend, rooting on the U.S. Just currently stacking film for the game preview that'll be coming out here sometime midweek for NC State. They are still playing games on the field. I know we just spent over half an hour talking about everything but football, but Doug Bowman's done an incredible job. Appreciate you answering this. I think answered a lot of people's questions ahead of September 30th, and we'll see what comes out of that. Live stream on YouTube. How about that?
Kolby, it's been a pleasure.
We'll have to do it again soon. All right, man. Have a good one, and appreciate everyone jumping in here. We will see you next on Wednesday at 8:30. So appreciate it. Everyone have a great day, and God bless. See you.